What's going on, everybody? This is Dean with Blue Ridge Overland Gear, and welcome to part 2 on our series on trail etiquette. Now, in the last video, we talked a little bit about the mindset to be in before you go, and some of the principles like tread lightly and leave no trace, which are great things to embrace even before you leave the house. Now, in this video, what we're going to look at is a little bit of situational awareness and some things that you might encounter on the trail and around the campsites that might be important for you to help kind of sort some things out. Now, the first one that I'm going to talk about is knowing your surroundings. And again, this is probably like, doing a little bit of homework before you go, but also know where you're at. So your maps like Gaia GPS, Onyx, and Garmin Hunt View will actually give you a breakdown of what the public and private land boundaries are in your area. And you can look at and know, well, am I on BLM land? Am I in a state forest? I'm in national forest. Am I on a national park or state park land? Am I on somebody's private land by accident? It also lets you know what the right-of-ways are. So if you're traveling down a given road or a given route, is that a public right-of-way? Even if it's on private land, are you allowed to be on it? Or is it a private road that you might need permission from the landowner, or does it have restricted access? Those types of things are great to know before you go and also while you're out and about. And again, those apps that I mentioned, Gaia GPS, Onyx, and Garmin Hunt View give you some of those resources where you can kind of look at where you're at right away. And they're great because you can look them up on your cell phone or a tablet on the fly, or do a little bit of homework before you go. The next one is going to be kind of related to that, and that is staying on the trail. There's actually a program called Stay the Trail, and I'm a big fan of it because it covers a wide variety of topics, and some of these overlap with some things we talked about in the previous video. But the things I want to highlight here are going to be things like obeying signs. I know it kind of seems a little obvious, but in some areas there are restrictions as to the types of vehicles that can be on certain trails, and you want to make sure you respect those, because the last thing you want to do is take a big vehicle like a Jeep or a full-size truck down a trail that's marked and designated for something like an ATV, because sometimes they start off pretty wide and it may not seem like a big deal, but the further you go, the more lightly traveled that trail gets, the narrower it gets, and you just might get to a spot where you physically can't fit down the trail without damaging it. So you want to make sure you're not that person. Also, you want to make sure that your vehicle is equipped and can handle the trail. Again, when you get out west, there are signs that say high clearance four-wheel drive only. So that's not something that you want to take your Honda Civic on, or even maybe something like a Subaru, because if it requires high clearance and you take a low clearance all-wheel drive crossover on it, you might bottom out, you might get stuck, you may not have the necessary recovery points. When you get to a place like Moab, Utah, there are trail rating systems that will tell you whether or not you need lockers or a winch or skid plates. Heed those warnings, heed those trail markers, and pay attention to them. The other thing you want to do with Stay the Trail is you want to make sure you're actually driving over obstacles, not around them. You don't want to make the trail any wider than it needs to be. And to be honest, if you get to an obstacle like a rock or a ledge or a mud puddle, and your first inclination is to go around it, you probably need a new hobby. I hate to be blunt like that, but that's just the fact. You have an off-road vehicle, you're out here doing this lifestyle, you don't want to be taking bypasses and widening the trail. There's nothing wrong with turning around if you're in over your head, or you get to an obstacle and you're like, whoa, wait a second, this isn't for me. Sometimes you got to turn around. Or if you're going to go through, go back to what we said in the first video about educating yourself, knowing recovery techniques, knowing rock crawling techniques, some of the more technical driving techniques. Those things will help you be prepared for getting to those obstacles and safely navigating through them without doing any excess damage to the trail or the surrounding area. The next thing that I like about Stay the Trail that I think is important for everybody is yielding. And the thing that everybody is going to have to yield to is horses. Horses are skittish creatures by nature. Even a well-trained horse can be spooked by something like a vehicle's exhaust or music from its radio or people talking as it goes by. So anytime you encounter a horse, you kind of want to stop and let the rider of that horse dictate what's going to happen. If they want to wave you by, they'll wave you by. If not, you sit tight until they pass you. And when they're a reasonable distance away, then you can resume traveling. But there's actually a whole hierarchy to yielding, and it basically goes like this. The bigger vehicles yield to the smaller vehicles, the vehicles yield to riders, riders yield to walkers, but of course, everybody yields to horses. So to kind of give you an example, if I'm driving my Jeep down the trail, I'm going to yield to somebody who's on a four-wheeler or a dirt bike. If I'm on a dirt bike or a four-wheeler, I'm going to yield to the person that's mountain biking or hiking. And of course, everybody is going to yield to the person that's on horseback. So basically, the bigger the vehicle, you yield to the smaller vehicles yield to pedestrians and those sorts of things. And like I said, everybody yields to horses. Now, there's one exception to that, and that is everybody yields to people traveling uphill. Uphill traffic has the right of way regardless of what the vehicle type is. And the reason being is it's very, very hard to regain momentum uphill when you've stopped. And also, if the person going uphill has to stop, they don't have the best visibility to back up or turn around. So you looking downhill have better visibility, you have better control of your vehicle, so you want to yield to uphill traffic. Another component of yielding is riding and driving to the right. A lot of the roads and trails that we travel tend to be very narrow, and sometimes they're only one vehicle width wide, or sometimes they might be a little bit wider. And the rule of thumb is you always want to ride or drive to the right, so that way oncoming traffic, which is also riding to the right, mitigates the chance of a head-on collision or something like that. And also, again, when you get to that whole idea of yielding to smaller vehicles, if I'm in my Jeep and I'm going down a trail and I'm in the middle of the trail, or I've kind of drifted over to the left and somebody on a motorcycle is coming the other way, they're going to hit me regardless of where I'm at. So if I'm to the right and I'm traveling slow and they're traveling to the right and they're traveling slow, it's a lot less likely that we're going to have a head-on collision. And to be honest, if I'm in my Jeep and somebody's on a bike, I'm going to win. And that's just not good for anybody involved. So that kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the first video with the Backcountry Discovery Routes Ride Respectfully program. And again, with tread lightly and share the trail, we want to make sure we're being respectful of other riders. The final component to yielding may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but you want to yield to people that have come up behind you. And this is basically a race rule, but it applies to people that are just out there driving and traveling the trail. If the person has caught up to you, they're already faster than you, and you don't want to hold them up. Now, you might be thinking, but I'm driving the speed limit. That's fine. It's not your prerogative to be the police or to be the person that's enforcing speed limits. Feel free to report that person. But if they've caught up to you, as soon as you can, pull over and let them go by. Because a lot of times you and your vehicle might be traveling slower. Like for me in my Jeep, I might be crawling along, taking my time. If somebody catches up to me and they're in a better built vehicle, or they're on something like a dirt bike or an ATV, they can go faster than me and I don't want to hold them up, so you're going to let them go by. So you want to make sure you're letting people that's, traveling faster than you get around you. And that goes whether you're on a trail or a dirt road or even a paved road. If that person has caught up to you, they're already faster than you. It's not a race. Nobody's going to get a prize for being first place. So you just want to kind of let them go by. Now, the last thing about being respectful is mitigating noise and dust. And this is both respectful of local landowners as well as other people that are out there enjoying it. We did kind of hit on this a little bit earlier in the first video, but I just want to kind of reiterate it that, again, being situationally aware as to what's around you, both for wildlife, property owners, other campers, other outdoor enthusiasts, be respectful of them. Again, don't be that person that's blaring loud music out in nature, because people go to nature to avoid noises like that. Don't have a loud, obnoxious exhaust on your vehicle, creating a whole lot of ruckus when you're driving through the woods, because again, it's going to disturb the wildlife. It's going to disturb the people that might be hiking or mountain biking and enjoying a little bit more of a peaceful form of travel. And also mitigate dust. A lot of the roads we travel are dirt and gravel, and when it gets dry, it gets dusty. And the faster you travel, the more dust you kick up. And if you're traveling by somebody's house and you've got a couple vehicles that travel past there and it kicks up a lot of dust, you're gonna coat that person's house in dust, and that's just not cool. So you wanna just kind of be mindful of that, be respectful of that. And when you encounter other people, oncoming traffic, those sorts of things, slow down and kind of mitigate that dust, mitigate that noise, just because it's going to be a more pleasant experience for everybody involved. And lastly,
just smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
smile and wave. And this is, again, one of my favorite ones. It's something that's been included in the previous video with the BDR Ride Respectfully program, but it's something I like to iterate, and I want to end this section on, because if you smile and wave at people, you're going to have a more pleasant experience. They're going to have a more pleasant experience, and more often than not, when you're nice to people, they're going to share some information about where you're at that they may not share with somebody who's maybe a little bit more rude. So if you're nice to people, you might be able to find a cool hidden campsite or a lesser known trail, or maybe a historic location like an abandoned mine or something like that. And when you're nice to other travelers, they're going to share information with you, and they might say, oh, hey, don't go there, it didn't live up to the hype, or don't camp there, there was a lot of mosquitoes. They might give you some other information. So again, smile and wave, be polite, be nice, because you'll get a lot further in life with that. Now, in the next video, we're going to look at some convoy and group traveling etiquette. So stay tuned for that video.